These are the absolute icon small motorcycles and scooters from every decade since 1960. We're going to go through our favorite little bikes from each.
Yeah, we love mini motos on TFL Bike. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that we kind of built this channel on mini motos. We absolutely love them, and every chance we get, we like to come back to them. A while ago, we did a list of the top 5 mini bikes you can still buy today, new at a dealership, but these are going back many years through all the decades, so whether you just want to learn a little bit of history or you're shopping for a cool collectible motorcycle, these are the ones to look out for.
And for the 1960s, to start off this list, we're going with arguably the most iconic small motorcycle of all time. This is the Honda Super Cub, which actually started production in 1958, but it gained momentum throughout the 60s. And of course, it spawned the famous ad campaign, "You Meet the Nicest People on a Honda." That started in 63, helped popularize Honda in the US. And man, I mean, not only for motorcycles, but just for advertising in general, that's one of the most iconic ad campaigns of all time. It ran for 12 years, and it's still talked about today.
Yeah, I mean, iconic on all fronts. You said iconic marketing campaign, iconic motorcycle. Could be argued this is one of the most iconic vehicles of all time, just in general. But yeah, it definitely helped give Honda a foot into the United States, made them super popular here. And it's a bike that stuck around for a really long time. And the design is so iconic that they even brought it back. You can now buy a brand new fuel-injected version of this bike. It looks basically identical, and anytime that happens in the industry, you know that the previous model, the real retro version, obviously had a large impact on the company if they went ahead and reproduced it many decades later.
Yeah, and it is technically the best-selling motor vehicle of all time, partly because it's approachable, easy to ride. Honda purposefully made it easy to maintain and keep running, simple. So these are bikes that you can buy brand new, like we said, or you can find an older one. I have a buddy in our hometown out here in Colorado that has one he bought for $800. He uses it to get all over the place. You can find them from any era. There are always parts available. They're really amazing motorcycles. So an absolute icon from the 60s.
The cool part about your buddy that you met in Lafayette with that bike, you met him because of mini motos.
Yeah.
We were outside. I was on my monkey. I think
I was on my monkey.
You were on your little Z. Yeah.
Connor was on the
trail 70, and this guy comes screaming down the road on his Cub, and he's like, "Oh my God, I saw
Other
mini
people
motos
on mini bikes,
and
yeah.
I had to come." So yeah, it's one of your great friends now, and just goes to show that you can meet the nicest people on a Honda.
Yeah, and little disclaimer, this list is very Honda heavy, partly because Honda, by a good margin, is the biggest motorcycle manufacturer out there. But they've also just made a lot of great mini bikes. But for the 1970s, we picked a motorcycle that's not a Honda. We thought about doing the CT70 because that's a motorcycle we've had a lot of experience with and we really enjoy. But we decided instead to go with the Suzuki OR50. This is a small bike, street legal, that we made a video on a little while back, and it was produced in 1979 and 1980, so right at the end of the decade, but they marketed it as a whopper of a chopper. So it really encapsulates that 70s chopper style.
Yeah, this looks like nothing else on the road. When
It's awesome.
Andy was the one working on it, we went and rode it over at his place, and when we saw it for the first time, or at least when I did, I was shocked. I didn't know that anything like that ever existed. Just the fact that a mini chopper exists, super cool, but then you add in that it's a 2-stroke and you know it's oil injected, so you don't have to deal with premix. You run it like a regular motorcycle. It's just awesome, and there's something really strange about having these big high handlebars and going down the road and a backrest, but you're going down the road and you're like revving it like a 2-stroke, revving the crap out of it.
Well, and it was badass to ride too, because if you bang second gear, it would pop the front tire up off the ground. It was a lot of fun to ride and decently quick. So in terms of it being street legal, it's actually pretty rideable on the street. Also 5-speed transmission, basically a dirt bike motor, 5.5 horsepower. But even though it's a very rare, uncommon bike, certainly not the most iconic small bike from the 70s, it is just one that really captures that 70s motorcycle culture.
Yeah, exactly. And we could have put, like you said, the Trail 70, but we've done so many Trail 70 videos. You all know what the Trail 70 is.
You already
at this
know
point.
about that, yep.
Yeah, and we don't like to be predictable on this channel, so we went with the strange pick that you might not have heard of.
We love off-roading here at TFL, and we also love off-roading on two wheels. And arguably the biggest, baddest dual sport of all time is up for auction right now on TFL Bids.
Yeah, the KLR 650 by Kawasaki. It's one of the most legendary, not just dual sports, but bikes in general ever built. And it's been in production for decades. So this thing is proven, it can go wherever you want it to, and this one is ready to take you on your next adventure up in the mountains or even commute to work if that's what you want to do with it.
And here's the other cool thing, not only can you put in a bid, but we're also accepting trade offers on this bike. So check it out at tflbids.com. For the 1980s, we picked the Honda Motocampo. It's a motorcycle, well, scooter, that we've talked about a whole lot in the past and that we just bought. So we just recently put up a video on this Motocampo, one of our dream bikes, which is a little ridiculous because it's a weird bike, but it was produced from 1981 to 1983. They made just over 53,000 of them, and it was originally around about $340 option that you could add on to cars like the Honda City, which was a little hatchback in Japan, and the Motocampo would fold up and fit in the trunk of the Honda City so that you could park your bigger hatchback somewhere, take the Motocampo out of the back, and ride it that last mile to get to where you're going. It's why it's called the trunk bike.
Yeah, last mile transportation was something that I guess they were trying out in the 80s. It never super really took off because they're not doing anything like this anymore.
Yeah, it took off for us.
Yeah, this wasn't a bike that was ever sold in the US. The one we bought was imported from Japan. We bought it through Iconic Motorbike Auctions, which ended up being a really good process. They're not paying us to say that or anything. I just kind of wanted to shout them out a little bit. But yeah, I think it's hilarious too. I don't know if you talked about this in the original video that we co-bought this thing. And it's like a $3,500 motorcycle that, you know, it's a nothing motorcycle to own by yourself, and we each own half of it, which is just hilarious.
Yeah, the cheapest bike in either of our garages.
Yeah.
But it's a 2.5 horsepower, 2-stroke 49cc, 99-pound curb weight, and it's 9.4 inches wide. So it's about as small as it gets. A little unstable at high speed, as you would imagine. Well, high speed for it at its top speed, but it is a ton of fun to ride, and it's just the most retro, cool bodywork. It's a really fun bike to be around.
Yeah, I was putting a speedometer cable on it last weekend, and my neighbors came outside and they were like, "What the hell is that thing?" And they wanted to know all about it. So it's definitely a head turner. And yeah, like you said, unstable. I think it would be cool to try and go through the process of getting it plated and making it street legal, just so
I'd like to, because it's got turn signals, it's got a horn,
it's got
a
everything
headlight,
it needs.
brake light.
It'd be cool to ride it around the neighborhood,
It would.
but it's more so a slow speed, like parking lot pit bike kind of thing. You're not going to be going
for
super
sure.
long
We're
distance
not
on
going to
it.
take the highway and ride it into work, ideally, but it is a cool bike.
Very 80s too, like the Motocampo font on the side and like that pixelated. It's super cool. It screams awesome. 80s. And the next bike on our list screams 90s.
Yeah. And this is actually the only motorcycle on this list that we haven't ridden ourselves. We saw one when we got a chance to tour a somewhat secret museum of Hondas where they had all of these crazy motorcycles, ATVs, cars, ATCs.
Yeah, I wish we could have made a video
cutouts.
there, and we might at some point. We're seeing if we can work on that.
Yeah, it's this incredible warehouse museum that they have that has just a boatload of their most special products. And they had an Easy 90 there that we got to poke around a little bit. They made this from 91 to 96, and it was essentially an off-road scooter, but it was meant to be approachable for people that weren't necessarily your typical experienced motorcycle rider. Kind of a similar idea of the original Super Cub, and this is, in fact, the Honda Cub Easy 90. Easy is in the name, so it was meant to be simple.
Yeah, this is super rad looking, and you can tell looking at the design they wanted this to be approachable for everybody, because you can't see any of the mechanics. Like, the chain is covered.
It's all hidden.
The engine's covered. Every bit of mechanical engineering on this bike is covered with pretty plastic and 90s retro colors. Something really cool we saw this morning, there was a almost like a timber sled kit that you could get for these to make it a snow bike, which looks super fun.
I don't know if Honda produced it. If they did, it wasn't in any major numbers, but it was called the Easy Snow, and it had a ski on the front and a track on the back. One of the coolest looking things I think I've ever seen, and it would be perfect for Colorado. But it's a 90cc two-stroke. With an automatic transmission, and it's got some lockable storage. It's even got a skid plate.
Yeah, so
it's pretty cool.
I mean, they're marketing this. It's shown on rocks right now. Probably not a ton of power if you want to like climb up in the trails, but yeah, there's just not a lot of other vehicles that look like this. I love I complain a lot about the big beak noses on modern bikes, but on this it works.
Yeah, so. It fits the whole style of that bike.
Yeah.
And really cool color scheme too. So very 90s, about as 90s as it gets.
The only time I've seen one of these is in that warehouse.
Yeah.
And it was covered in dust and looked like it had been sitting there for 20 years. I've never seen one of these for sale or out on the road.
Yeah, and they exist. They're just not easy to come by. It's part of the reason that we've never ridden one.
There you go.
We'd love to.
Yeah, if you have one of these, please bring it by.
Now, for the 2000s, and this is Andy's pick, we went with the original line of CRFs, small CRFs. So the CRF 50, CRF 70, CRF 80, and CRF 100. And these are just a line of bikes that got so many people into motorcycling. It was...
Got me into motorcycling.
Yeah, it's what followed up the Honda XRs, which were also fantastic little dirt bikes. The 50 and the 70 were semi-automatic 3-speeds. The 80 and the 100 5-speed manuals, and these are still great bikes today. Whether you want a bike for your kid, you want a little camp bike to ride around the campground or through the woods, or if you want a pit bike.
Yeah, so the modern version of this would be the CRF 110 or the CRF 50, which they're now doing in those super rad pink and teal colors.
Yeah.
I own a CRF 110 right now. It's my third one of those bikes, and I've learned about myself that as soon as I sell a CRF 110, I instantly regret it, and I start looking for another one. So I think this one's here to stay. And yeah, I've learned that about myself, that in order for me to be happy, I need a kid's dirt bike or a kid's pit bike in my garage.
Well, and you're not alone in that, because there's even race series around the CRF 110 being ridden by adults.
Yeah, there's here in Colorado, there's like people that have fully built out pit bikes, and they're elbow to elbow cutting each other off. I saw a clip. There was a race like 2 weekends ago. Someone came around one corner and T-boned another guy. And so they went down the whoop section, and then around the next right-hand corner, the other guy cut the guy who T-boned him off, and that guy went down. And these bikes are so small and laughable that this guy like just leaps out in the dirt and tries to like pull the rider off of his 110 because he was so annoyed that he got cut off. So probably crazier racing on pit bikes than you'll see on like full-size 450s. It's so fun to watch. And I've thought about entering. They have like stock classes too, where you can enter with just a bunch of other people that have bone stock CRF 110s. And I want to do it, but I know I'm going to break bones. So I've told myself I'm not going to.
Yeah, it's the fun thing about any one of the bikes on this list is they can be, well, most of them at least, they can be as intense as you want them to be. I guess maybe not for some of them. The Moto Compo is not that intense. But yeah, they're really fun little bikes, and endless amount of good times to be had with them.
Yeah, and Andy told us something pretty interesting about these bikes, was that the lead paint debacle back in the late 2000s, around like 2007, 2008, 2009, somewhere in there, there was basically a stop sale. Every manufacturer in the US was told to stop selling small dirt bikes and small motorcycles under 100 cc's. So there was a period of time where if you were a kid, you could not get a brand new small dirt bike, which is not the way to get people to start buying the bigger bikes as you go up. And apparently it was all because of the paint they used, and they were worried about, kids getting toxic paint in their mouths.
Yeah.
So interesting story if you want to look into that.
Yeah, and Andy's advice was don't chew on your frame or your handlebars.
Good advice.
Which is good advice, just in general, because you never know what's going to be on there. Now, for the 2010s, we picked another icon, the Honda Grom. So on the start of this list, we did the Super Cub. That's a bike that Honda came out with, changed motorcycling. Honda Grom, another really iconic bike, especially for the 20-teens. This has also gotten so many people into riding. Such an easy way to learn how to work a clutch on a bike, how to go through the gears, very approachable, inexpensive, great fuel economy, easy to maintain, easy to ride, and you can have as much fun on these bikes as an experienced rider as you can learning how to ride on one, because people stunt these bikes, they race these bikes, they modify the hell out of them. They're really cool.
Yeah, I think the important thing for the Grom was that it operates like a full-size motorcycle, and it looks like a mini full-size motorcycle. It doesn't look like... It looks like you took a naked bike and you shrunk it down. It doesn't look too wimpy or anything. And I think there was really something to be said for a bike that was right around $3-4 grand that someone could go in, get brand new, do financing on, so they're not spending all that out of pocket right away, and do it easily at a dealership and get into riding immediately. Sure, there's always cheap bikes for sale, on Craigslist and Facebook or whatever, but I think that was huge, is that you could go in and buy a brand new bike for $3,500 or whatever and get into riding.
And one that you can ride around on really pretty much any road. I mean, it's not going to be obviously a great highway bike, but 125cc, air-cooled, so again, simplicity. Back in the 20-teens, they were 4-speed. Of course, the most recent Grom is now 5-speed, but these are just fantastic motorcycles that you can use in most conditions.
Yeah, there's a couple of crazy people that have cross-country'd these.
Yeah, it's possible, but
coast.
Man,
it would suck.
Couldn't be me.
Yeah, and I mean, this really started a new category, or got a category that kind of died off a while ago going again. So right after the Grom came out, Cowie came out with the Z125 Pro, Honda came out with the Monkey, there's now the Navi, the Trail 125, the new Super Cub. So yeah, the Grom proved to be a huge success, and Honda started making a lot more mini motos. Every time we talk about Honda mini motos, we have to put this little thing in, bring back the DAX. Bring back a new Moto Compo.
Bring the DAX here and recreate the Moto Compo, please. And now for the 2020s, this is all Alex.
Yeah, this is the Ovale. This is a crazy new category of bike. I think you could call it a completely new category, because back in the day you had little tiny pocket bikes and stuff.
Well, and there was the NSR 50, YSR 50.
But the Ovales, they're Italian built, so they're mini GP bikes that the build quality is just fantastic. I found 2 of them for sale last summer, a 110 and a 190 GP0. I bought both of them, got rid of the 110, kept the 190. They also make a 160. But if you want some entertainment and you want to watch some racing, look up Ovale GP races. There's there's a video with a bunch of MotoGP riders that took some of them out, so real professionals. And honestly, what's more fun is watching little 9-year-olds rip these things around the track. It is just super cool to watch.
Is it right to say that these were made initially for kids to learn how to race, and then they made an adult version in the GP2?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the 190cc GP0 that I have, I don't think they ever made that with kids in mind. I think they had this platform that they could stick 3 different engines into, basically. So it was easy enough to stick a Daytona engine in there and call it an adult bike. And I think they realized that, the 110 and the 160 are selling great for kids. There's a ton of adults buying the 190s, and they could use a little more space in the chassis. So they came out with the bigger GP2. I know once the pricing comes down on those and they're more available on the used market, I'm going to be looking for one. And I know Andy, who's watching now too, he wants one real bad.
Well, because your GP0 is so small, and it's not that slow. It's
It'll do 70 miles an hour. It's fast.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying to be on a bike that's that tiny and that powerful, because it's got no problem getting motivated, and it just feels so strange being on a bike that small that is that powerful. So
the coolest part of these bikes for me are like just the build quality though. Like you look at the top triple and the forks and everything. Yeah, it's super
They're built
well
like
built.
real race bikes.
And that's why they cost a lot of money. I mean, to buy one new, you're looking at like, I think over $8,000.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, that's really, well, I guess that's one of the only expensive bikes on this list. Motocompos are pretty expensive because they didn't make that many of them and they're all imported. We got ours for just under $4,000, but most of them list for around $6,500. But the rest of these are all pretty affordable. Even a new Grom is not that much money.
No, and I mean, there's so many Groms out there. That's like,
yeah,
the used prices are starting to come down. We were in this crazy point for a while where they were sometimes even more expensive than buying a new one just because you couldn't find a new one.
Yeah.
But prices are starting to return to somewhat of a normal state, and that's good for all of us. So
that's the list.
That's the list. There's the top mini bike from each decade going back to the 60s, and I'm sure you guys are going to disagree with some of these. So if you have
let us know.
picks, drop a comment.
Yeah, let us know what some of your favorites are. These are our personal favorites. There's so many cool mini bikes out there. I mean, so many great small dirt bikes, so many street legal bikes. So yeah, no shortage. Let us know what your favorites are, and we'll see you in the next video.